most of the Republican candidates are saying that they would scotch the Iran JCPOA if they could, as soon as they get elected. If it's such a bad idea, and in fact it's got holes like Swiss cheese now, what would any Democrat candidate or elected perpetuate from this administration forward, or what would they change?
I mean, I think that's a fundamental question. It's a question of how beholden they are to this deal in its current form. Because a Democratic candidate can believe that that a deal, some variation of this deal, is the preferred outcome, but they may not be blind to the deficiencies, the material deficiencies that exist in the current deal. So to me, it's not so much a question of a fundamentally new strategy for Democrats. I think there's going to be adherence to the deal. It's a question of their willingness to look at the deal critically, to try to patch the holes that exist in it, and to try to sort of create a better, more robust framework for containing Iran.
Do you feel that the shortcomings of the deal are intentional on the part of this administration?
I don't. I think the deal, I think, reflects a conviction on the part of the White House that this was the best we were going to get. This is sort of, the Iranians were going to walk away. We really were eager to get this deal. But it also, candidly, I believe it reflects some less than stellar negotiating, because there were things that could be done relatively easily. For example, stretching out the time in which Iran receives the $100 billion in economic benefit that simply weren't explored in any meaningful way. And I think it's silly to suggest that Iran would have walked away, because they still would have gotten the $100 billion. It's just, I think, less than robust negotiating created a situation that amplified the deficiencies of the deal.
In your talk here at APEC, you mentioned a bazaar or marketplace scenario as one of the greatest things to fear. Would you elaborate on that, please? Sure.
Well, I think intrinsically a gullible Western consumer in a Middle Eastern marketplace is at a disadvantage, because he or she sees an item that is he or she believes is of value, very desirable, but may not know the intrinsic value. And as a result, there is a propensity to overpay. I'm certainly guilty of it when I travel in the Middle East, because I see something nice that I'd like to bring back home. My worry is that we're sort of seeing the diplomatic scenario of this play out, where the nuclear deal, because of the potential benefits for the administration's legacy, because of the potential benefits for what the administration believes the region should look like, are so great, the administration is incentivized to paper over the deficiencies in the agreement.
But didn't it boil down to, would you rather fight Iran without nuclear weapons or fight them later with nuclear weapons?
That's certainly what the administration contended. I think the scenario was arguably far more complex. I didn't believe the binary scenario where it was either war now or the nuclear deal. My sense was that there was a lot of things short of war, including expanded economic leverage, including democracy promotion, other things that we could have tried. Right. But the administration systematically closed off those avenues by arguing consistently that these were the only two choices. And of those two choices, clearly a deal was more palatable than going to war.
Well, so why? Why? If the alternative is to fight them when they have nuclear weapons?
No, certainly true. For this administration, the temptation was to craft a scenario that the administration hopes, and it still doesn't know, but hopes that over time would lead to a change in Iranian behavior. What the administration essentially has bargained on is that this decade, that the decade the deal is in force, would, in the intervening years, spur a change in Iranian ideology and Iranian behavior. So it was a speculative gamble. It's a gamble that this administration isn't going to be around to collect on if they're correct, and it's not going to be around to be accountable for if they're not.
But you don't think it was done with with a wink and a nod on their part, that they were looking to go into the and get a lousy deal for political expediency?
I think there might have been some of that towards the tail end of the negotiations, right? The robustness of our negotiating stance arguably slipped over time, depending, as they were negotiating the nitty-gritty. Right. I think the administration banked very heavily on having a deliverable in the form of some deal or another, and that superseded stringent negotiations.